What up, y'all? I'm Steve with Elev8, and tonight's Elev8 is with Takoda Madrona. I'm really excited about this. If you've seen our first interview with them, we were growing, we were learning, and I kind of messed it up with this going straight live. So I'm really excited to see what's going on tonight. I've got to hold some of this guy's pieces in my hand, meet him personally. So I'm really excited to get this interview done. I also want to throw it out there. If you guys want to support Elev8, check out some of our good gear right here. We got mind, body, spirit. It's all elevated to keep you above the cloud. We also got Elev8 dolls and Elev8 dudes brand ambassador programs. Check it out. You can earn some free stuff like this, credits, and what's really cool is you get to put some smiles on some other people's faces. Also, we have Elev8 Veterans. It's our 501c3. Go check it out. If you want to donate some money to Elev8 Veterans, it's a perfect place to do it. And it's good stuff. Anyways, I'm really excited to get into this interview with Takoda. All right, we got Takoda Madrona here, and thanks a lot for joining us tonight.
Hey, man.
So first thing, I want to know, how did you get into glass? And I want to say thanks a lot again for coming to do this. You were at the very beginning of our Elev8 8s, and I totally messed your thing up. So I'm really excited to have you back and double the pleasure. So
yeah, no, I'm happy to be back.
So how did you get started into this crazy adventure?
Yeah, well, I was young. I was making, I made art in any medium I could find my whole life, pencils, pens, paint, sculpting with clay. I actually took, if you guys remember when AOL CDs was a thing and you could get them for free at Blockbuster and the grocery store and stuff, I'd take stacks of those, which you weren't supposed to do, but I'd take stacks of those and I'd actually melt them together and make big sculptures out of them.
Holy
and
shit.
So I was kind of familiar with like melting stuff, and then as I got older, when I was like 16, I was smoking weed, and I started making bottle bongs, and they got really, really elaborate. And then my friend turned 18. He started going into the smoke shops, and he said, "Hey man, if you made this stuff out of glass, like you'd make a killing. Like, your stuff is cooler than some of the shit that I see in stores and it's made out of plastic." I'm like, yeah, I don't know, man. That's, it just went over my head, and, I didn't give it too much thought. But then I went on a trip back home because I was currently living in Hawaii. My parents moved around a lot. My dad was a doctor, and
Okay.
my parents moved around a lot. So I was currently living in Hawaii, and my home was Vermont, where I was born. So I went back to go visit my brother when I was younger, about 14, and I stumbled into a glassblowing shop, and they were doing a demo, and I saw the fire, and I saw, how the glass moved, and I saw lots of examples in the store of like all these cool things. And I knew nothing of the industry. I just started learning about the medium, and just like, wow, this exists. Like, this is like hot glue meets clay meets AOL CDs meets paint meets everything. It just all came together. And so I went back to Hawaii. I went on to MySpace because Facebook really wasn't a thing yet. And I went onto MySpace and I just started emailing anybody and everybody I could find. And in Hawaii at the time, maybe I just didn't look hard enough or whatever, but I couldn't really find anybody locally. But I just so happened to stumble upon the shop up here where I was born. And so I asked my family, and my dad made this little agreement with me where he was like, "Look, if you figure out a way to get your diploma and start taking community college classes, then I'll help you pay for glassblowing classes." And so I figured all the logistics out, and I flew out to Vermont, and I stayed here for a while I took community college classes and simultaneously learned how to blue glass at 16.
Damn,
And
that's really early.
That lasted for a little while, a year or two, and then there was a bit of a back and forth between Hawaii and Vermont while my family started moving over back to Vermont with me. And then at 18, So I took a little break. I took a 1.5 year break. So I took my first lessons at 16, probably about 6 months. And then I took a 1.5 year break, came back at 18. And then at 18, I just never stopped. I came back, started glass blowing. And after about a year, I started teaching beginner lessons. After that, I started doing custom work and repairs. And I just, for about 5 years, I worked solid for a company. And then for the past 5 years, I've worked solo under my name.
So you got about 10 years into
Yeah.
into the
You
game.
could say technically I've been on the torch for 12, but there was a 1.5 year gap there. So I say about 10.
Right on. Wow, man, that's quite a thing to know that you were going to do that so early on. That's really neat.
Yeah, I mean, I just stumbled on it. Like most people stumble upon it. And somebody said it's like you're either bit by the bug or you're not bit by the bug. You know, and when you come upon it, the bug gets you or it doesn't. And the bug got me really early.
Oh yeah, that's really awesome. And then usually I ask how you got your name, but you're just using your name, and I find that I really love that because sometimes you get these. Well, for instance, we'll say Buck or something. Like, who is that? What is that? It's just a name. So I love that you're using their name because I know you as Takoda and you're Takoda.
Yeah. To my understanding, a lot of glassblowers went under an alias because of it being so illegal to practice what they were doing, making pipes and stuff. So they created aliases to much easierly be known, but also not be tracked down. So as I came into it, this was years after it became more and more legal. So there wasn't as much of a need for a nickname. And this gets a little bit more personal, but I feel like on a certain level, with my father's success and my need to feel like, even though I didn't end up going to college and go in the direction that he did, because my father's a doctor with 2 PhDs and an MD, never stopped going to school. Even doctors are like, what? So on some level, I feel like maybe I wanted the push to have my name in lights. You know what I'm saying? So not just some sort of alias, but I definitely was very comfortable and liked going under my own name to one day maybe be some, make my dad proud. You know what I'm saying? So
the pressure parents put on you, right?
Right, exactly.
And they don't do it on purpose. It's just a pressure that
it totally, it wasn't even them. To be completely honest, my parents have always been those like, do what you love, like just find what you love in this world and go for it. Like they were always like that, never pushed me to go into the medical field, never pushed me to do anything. They just said, just find what you love, even though my dad was who he is. And my mother was a midwife for 20 years, practiced medicine. And so.
Wow, that's pretty cool. So you've been on the torch for 10 years. What items did you start out with? Was it pendants? Was it pipes?
Well, in the very beginning, when I learned my first lessons, what I learned was basically just how to make a pipe from beginning to end. And I learned a little bit of fume work. So when you see people doing fume work, it's a lot of fume control where you're trying to get specific colors and layering it so you can get different colors all together and different layers of color and depth. So I didn't go super into detail with that and like really go at that, but I was learning some basic fume work, covering glass with fume, burning it down, trying to get the greens and the blues and stuff like that from silvers. And it was mainly just kind of 1 layer or 2 layers, of fume. So I didn't go into super depth, but we were working with some basic fume work. And I did some, after we learned some basic outside work, working on the outside of the tubing, we would flare them open and do some internal inside out work is what they would call it. So we did some inside out work, we draw on the inside, melt it down, make some quote unquote double blown pipes, the extra heavy pipes. So I used to call that ghost glass, where it would where you'd get the implosion effect and
Yeah.
fuming. So you would be all transparent and fumey, but have that ghost, type of implosion to it. So anyway, I we would make those kinds of pipes. So I would make kind of batches of those, and then do some basic frit pieces. So internal frit pipes.
Yep.
So a lot of what I did in the beginning was production work of pipes, of just frit pipes, fume pipes, some bubblers, things like that. And then on the side, I would play around, and I made some like snakes and whales, and I did some custom work and stuff on the side, and did like giraffes and bears, and did some animal sculpting and stuff. But for the most part, it was all kind of production work like that. And then I did repairs and customs, as I mentioned.
Ooh.
And then when I really started transitioning into, and I did like bubblers, and tried to make little mini bongs and bubblers, but I was just playing around. Really, a lot of the money and the production work was really mainly pipes and bubblers and steamrollers. There was really not too much ground glass joints even back then. We were doing a lot of push bowls still. So I did a lot of that. And then I was doing, and then when ground glass joints kind of came into the picture, I was doing a lot of drop downs, if you remember those.
Yep.
So you're doing a ton of drop downs when rigs started shrinking. So I did a ton of drop downs. I actually invented something, quote unquote invented, I'm using the term very loosely, but I called it a swan neck, which was basically if you remember, we would use those swing necks.
Yep.
It was basically like a swing neck, but I made it all in one piece, and it was just this big bent thing with a hole. And then I made a loop underneath it that could hold a nail.
Right.
So I just like threw it was like a swing neck, but with a glass nail type of thing that all came in one thing. Made a ton of those, like things like that. And I just did a lot of production of pretty basic stuff like that in between doing the customs and repairs.
Do you feel doing a lot of the production stuff really helped like advance your skill set in the future? And if you just went out and just did like custom, do you think you'd have the same fundamental like ability?
No, I think that I always tell people that doing the lessons and doing the production work that I had to do, it forces you to do the fundamentals again.
And you did that for 5 years.
Again and again, 5 years. But in between, I was doing the bong repairs, which again was a huge, you're working on other people's work. So now you have to learn how to replicate other people's work.
That's very difficult.
Like a huge thing. So there was, I was so scattered in the things I was doing, but over time, I was collecting a lot of different bits of information, but doing the lessons forces you to tell somebody how to do it.
And these were the beginner classes.
Yeah, exactly. So It's all fundamentals. So it makes you have to understand it even in a different way than when you're doing it yourself, because you have to explain it to another person and hundreds of other people too, not just one other person. So you're just constantly figuring out ways to explain this in different ways, and it teaches you to do it again and again and learn the fundamentals. So, and the production makes you do it again and again and again and again and again. So there are different types of glass blowers. Like my teacher was the type of guy that did a different thing all the time, and like tried to, and he taught me like that. And I like doing that. That's kind of who I am. I like doing something else different all the time. But then there's a whole other type of glass blower which was like his buddy that worked there. They weren't super close friends. They were they were like nemesis. But he was the type of guy that learned basically by making 100 glass balls. And then he made 100, and then he pushed 100 glass bowls in those balls to make 100 slides. And then he did it again, but with pipes. So he did 100 neck pulls.
So he could refine each little step rather than make a ball, push it. You'd make the balls, refine that, then push and refine that. So it was breaking it down. That's pretty neat.
Yeah, like, and he would do 100 of the exact same thing and just get that perfect, then move on to some other little basic thing, And that's how he learned. there's different ways of going about it, but collectively, yeah, like the teaching lessons, doing the production definitely forced me to do the fundamentals and focus on them a lot. So that was really beneficial, and made sure that, you know, my neck pulls were straight, my surface, my wall thickness was even, so that when I did move on to the more bigger stuff or the nicer stuff or stuff, my the piece collectively would match up to
Right.
whatever detail I was trying to throw into it and stuff like that. So I think that's really beneficial. I might not be the greatest example of the things that I'm saying, and people might look at my work and be like, what are you talking about? You're not that clean. Totally get that. But the things I'm saying are still
I will
valuable.
disagree with you. I've owned a piece of yours, and I got to see it in person, and the pressure you were under was fucking huge, and it came out fucking clean as a very, very,
Thank
very
you.
clean.
I was I was really proud of that piece. You're referring to the Las Vegas, the giant
elephant
bong that I made in Las Vegas. Yeah.
Yeah, I love the elephant, the way it put the water out, and if anybody knows, it was huge, and it just to hold that and work it, it's unfucking real, man. Hats
Yeah.
off.
So thank you. Yeah, Champs just posted a photo of me holding the whole piece up vertical because it was so heavy. I just stopped holding it sideways, and I'm just holding it all vertical, and it's like the size of my torso, and I'm just polishing off this little tiny thing on it. And I love that photo. It's just a great photo. It was I was very proud of coming out with that piece. Definitely, probably the biggest piece I've made solo.
Yeah, you should be. It was fire. Um, did you have any mentors when you started? I know you had a couple shopmates in the studio you're working with, but did you have a mentor that really took you under his wings or her wings?
Not really any specific mentor. Like I didn't I worked for a shop, and I had Dylan Davis was my teacher. But he doesn't blow glass anymore. He taught me my original lessons. And then another guy that worked in the studio was Johnny K. And I'm not really sure how much he's blowing glass. He definitely still blows glass, but I just don't know how much he's really blowing glass right now. He's a local. He kind of just hops around a bit. And I haven't spoken to him much in the past couple of years. So there were a couple of guys in the shop, but really it was just the collective community and who I had around. We all bounced stuff off of each other. One of my really good friends in town, he moved here from New Hampshire kind of early on. His name's Michael Sheswick, but he goes by Ad Nauseum. And he's working again. He was off the torch for a little while, but he made dragons and honey stuff and tons of stuff. And he was a good friend to have. And I wouldn't call him a mentor, but he definitely was a good friend to have around,
And help
we
push
bounce
you a
stuff
bit.
off of each other. Exactly. You have friends that push each other constantly. And I actually went to school. I went to high school with a guy named Dylan Hughes, and he became Jekyll Glass a few years after I started blowing glass. And so he, it was interesting that, one of my best friends I grew up with also became a glass blower.
Yeah, so you were
and he did it, and
in
he
a
did it
group here.
separately from me too. Like
Right.
he didn't even do it in the same shop as me. He went off and did his own thing. So we ended up bouncing stuff off of each other, and yeah, just the whole community and people. I didn't have one specific mentor, but the shop I came up in, helped me out with a lot of stuff, and got me with the fundamentals, and then traveling was a huge thing, like going to shows, like going to trade shows, and getting to see competitions and seeing
How many trade shows did you go to before you actually started competing in shows?
I went to a couple of them twice, so it's hard to say how many, but I went to Big. I went to, I went to Big in Colorado. I went to Glass Roots in Wisconsin. I went to Champs. Actually, you know what? I didn't go to Champs until I competed, so I didn't go to Champs yet. And I went to Michigan Glass Project, which was a huge thing for me. Michigan Glass Project I did 4 years in a row prior to the pandemic. So this year would have been my 6th, but they didn't do it last year or this, and they're not doing it this year.
Are you going to Melt this year?
No. But so I went to a bunch of trade shows, and like those. So let's say those 3 are the main ones. I think I may have done one other thing, and I went to them a couple times. So a handful, 5 or 6 shows. Went to a couple shows, and locally there's a couple of little events, and I tried to go to the couple little local events as well. And and then by working for the company, I got to meet a couple people, and I just a couple of those. And then once I was solo, I had a lot more time on my hands for traveling on my own and doing my own thing that wasn't connected to any of that. So I emailed Champs, and Maddie White was super inviting and nice, and was just like, yo, come on down, dude. And I went to Atlantic City because I'm in Burlington, Vermont, so Atlantic City's the closest. And I went to Atlanta, and Atlantic City is in-person glass blowing, as opposed to Florida, which is often bring your own piece.
Right.
So, and I wanted to do the in-person stuff. I always liked the idea of in-person demos, and MGP was actually my first. Maybe that wasn't my first, but that was one of my first times getting up in person.
Do you like the pressure as well, being live like that?
I've never really seen it as pressure. I came up in a glassblowing place that I was always live. So I taught lessons live for everybody downtown or whatever that came into the shop. So anybody that came into the shop, I was teaching lessons live. I was always doing my production live. So I grew, and as you've noticed, I'm a person that likes being on camera. It's like I'm actually very introverted. It's only when somebody puts me on the spot that I can come out and speak. And Maddie White always made that joke. It was like, you're so wild and crazy on the camera, and you think like when you go and hang out with you, you're gonna be like all nuts, but then you sit down at the table and we go order food, and you're like, can I just have like a side salad and like could I possibly have some dressing? It's okay if not. And he'll make fun of me like that like I'm those two very different people. But I digress. I apologize. What was the question?
I think I don't even know. I know we were talking about a mentor, and then the pressure of work. Oh, the pressure at the
yes. Just being in person. That's what we were talking about. Just being in person. It became second nature to me. So and it also became quite fun.
Meeting all the different people coming in. That had to have been really neat.
I mean, it was exciting, man. Like coming up, like people really. It is really flattering, the amount of admiration that people give to glass blowers. So I think that was a massive part of it, and definitely like, wow, like you love that, like the people just loved it, and I love giving back like that. And I also like the teaching lessons and stuff. I really saw how much people got out of it, So I guess that was not to. It was an ego boost, as I kind of started out talking about, but really it was an ego boost in the sense of like, I really, really loved the connection with people, that they really got something out of it. And it was just something I did every day,
right.
And so it really was just fun. It was just a lot of fun. And I really, really enjoyed being a part of something, I came up kind of being a part of something, part of a store, and then I wasn't part of that. And so the shows and doing demos and stuff, that was a big part of like being a part of the community. So that was like just participating. It was just really fun.
Hell yeah. What classes have you taken? And if you have taken any classes, do you feel they perpetuated your skill set, and do you recommend them?
I recommend taking as many classes as you possibly can. My number one recommendation to people when they first start glass blowing is find a teacher and not just off the bat only go off of YouTube, because the teacher will really help you. One, in the beginning, you're going to want to learn how to run the tanks and not blow yourself up, and you're going to want to run. You're going to want to learn how to run a kiln. It is very straightforward, but if you have no idea what you're looking at, it's just a bunch of blinking lights. So it's
well, and it comes down to annealing. I was talking to a guy like 15 years experience, and he thought annealing was you put your glass in the kiln, bring it up to 1050, and then turn it off. That's not annealing. So, you know, learning
the
from
whole
a
annealing
teacher
process
that can
is
explain
really complex as well.
Right.
And people can get into a lot of depth with that. Truth be told, I crash kilns a lot, but it's you know, you want to, but you don't want to just crash it as soon as it hits 1050, because that's not the point of annealing. You have to bring it up to the same temperature and allow every single molecule in the piece to be vibrating at the same rate of 1050. So, and that's not going to happen instantaneously. You're going to have to wait a little bit and then bring it down. And the goal is to bring it down slow enough. And it also has to do with the thickness of the glass and things like that. And, you know, but that's like a whole complex thing. And you can learn more and more about that from different people. But in the beginning, really, you just, you know, I always recommend people to find a teacher, show them the basics, beginning to end, just like to make a piece, beginning to end, and have it not blow up on you. As soon as you get that, then you can, you know, add to it, learn a little new thing, practice what you already know. But if you know nothing and you're really just, what I say, it's just, you can learn like 6 months of trial and error in 1 hour with somebody.
100%.
So why
and that's if it's
do
a good
that
teacher
to yourself, you know? So
because you're ignorant and you don't know. But like you just pointed out, you're telling people, take the classes. If you're going to do it, spend the money. You know, what's a few $100, even if you're paying, what's a few $100 to turn 1 hour into 6 months? Do the math on your time. I love that.
And it doesn't always have to be going and spending a couple, you know, hundreds of dollars for a couple days with the most famous guy in the world. You know, I traveled the country. You know, I went to a handful of states and I actually did some classes. I taught a big class in Dayton, Ohio. I did 2-day demos in Missouri, St. Louis. I do MGP every year. I taught a class in Pennsylvania, and all the classes I taught were, I think, under $200. Like, I don't really remember what I even charged. I wasn't really concerned about the money. I really was like there to try to do a good job.
It's your skill set as well,
you know. And it's like it's really fun. But also extending off that, what I really want to say is just that friends, like, there are other people in the community, and just hang out with people, work with them, bounce stuff off of each other. It's really, really, really important. I don't have as much of that as I'd like to. And like, I went down to Florida and got to hang out at the Orlando Glass Union. And it's a giant studio with 10 different artists constantly all working together. And it was just the most fun I'd had in a long time. And like, this was, you know, after the pandemic but it was so fun to be around that. You know, it was a more personalized kind of trade show. Like, so, and you know, you're all hanging out. So I that is good to find that as much as you can. And then just finding a teacher to show you the beginnings and ends of how they do what they do, as far as like a big rig, not just like a pipe, you know, see what another glassblower does to come up with what he puts out there in the world. And you'll just exponentially get more and more out of doing that. So I always say, work with somebody if you can. And as far as what I've done, I actually haven't traveled and I haven't taken as many classes with people as I'd like to, but I've traveled and gone to shows, as I've mentioned, watched tons of people work. I've competed with people, worked with people. I mean, I've competed against my idols. I grew up. It was so funny. I grew up, one of the first people in a competition I ever rooted for, and was like, I went to my first competition, saw a dude, and I was like, I love your work and I love you. I hope you win. Like, that first dude, competed with him like 7 years later. And it was like the coolest thing in the world. And I let him borrow my torch because he needed a hand torch, and we're like buddies now. It's just the coolest thing in the world. So, but I haven't, I mean, our story is pretty cool too. I'll mention that in a second. But I have a grinder I have an SSV grinder from like 20 years ago. Like, it's crazy how I have this grinder from so long ago. And then all of a sudden we made this connection 20 years later. It's wild. I took some lessons from Revere. So Dustin Revere, I actually flew out to Dustin, let's say 6 to 7 years ago.
Okay.
6 years ago, maybe. Yeah, but I flew out there. I basically just hung out in a studio, and we did 2 hours. It was like 2 hours of it was 4 hours or something. But I mean, I hung out there too, and I just hung out for a while. But we did like 2 to 4 hours of him actually teaching me. So he showed me how to make a milli, and he showed me how to make a yin yang milli. I actually think I have some over here. Actually, I have it right here.
Yeah.
So he showed me how to make this yin yang milli.
Fresh, man. That was a minute ago too. You had that, huh?
Yep. So 7 years ago. I just keep everything on my little case right here. But so I've got that guy, and he showed me a couple of his other millis, and I've got another one of his millis. And but he showed me how to make he made that from scratch in front of me, and I brought it home. And then I made one, and a little small, like, actually, you know what? I didn't make one there. I did that when I got home, I think. I just know that I made one. I just can't remember chronologically what happened there. But I watched him make that. And then what I was interested in, because he did his dewdrops. He does his dewdrops. They're basically, it's like a beaker, but it's like a little dewdrop. The mouthpiece comes off. Mm-hmm. So I had never really gotten to see lathe working, or rather how to make like a beaker shape, and like all the, kind of, I didn't see, so I asked him, how do you make a beaker? And he was like, oh, well, the dewdrops and all that stuff, like, that's all done on the lathe. So like, that's not what you do. But I can show you how to make a beaker, like, off the lathe. And he showed me 2 different versions. So he actually showed me, it was interesting when I learned from Revere, I noticed that he glass blew a lot like me, which is kind of like, I mean this in no egotistical way. And like, I'm like Revere, but I think that he had a very scattered education, just like I had a very scattered education, if that makes any sense. So he was like, well, you could do this, this, or this, he's just like throwing different shit at me. So, and when I watched him work, I was like, okay, yeah, cool. Like he kind of works a little bit more like me, a little more scattered. But
and there's so many different ways to perform a technique. And to get there, it's just like, which way do you choose?
And I've never used rollers. And I went down Florida, worked with Strawberry Glass, Trevor, and he uses rollers. And everything he does is on rollers, and like working and taking it up. And like how he works is so different than I do. It's just so wildly different. And it looks so pretty when he works, it's like mathematical. But anyway, so Revere shows me more of an old school method. So it's like old school soft glass blowing method, kind of converted to a Boro version. So he takes it, makes a big bubble, and he like takes a big blow tube with a ball, makes a ball, kind of more like a oval shape. But makes a big ball, and then he gets it nice and warm. So he kind of just showed me how to consistently heat it and retain the wall thickness by not heating it too much.
That's
a
important.
huge thing I didn't really understand. I'd heat things way too much, and that will just fuck up all your wall thicknesses, because I'm just like, I'm a kid. I'm just like, I want to get the shit hot, you know. So he's showing me how to kind of warm it up, slowly get it moving, and then and he's got full control over it at that point. Warms it up, then he rolls it on the table. It's hard to show you, but rolls it on the table with his blow tube towards the ground and the object leaning on the graphite. So he just like rolled it on the graphite, and it just rolled itself right into a beaker shape. And I'm just like, okay. And it looked like soft glass. Like it just looked like how you would do soft glass work, but without, how they roll it on the big metal thing. They're rolling it on that thing. He just kind of was rolling himself. But it was very similar. It was just like, here you go. And he just rolled himself up a beaker. Perfect wall thickness just because of the way he was working it. And then worked out the bottom to make it more nice. And like, for the most part, I can start things out like that and I can do that. But then there's the other way and then I kind of took a little bit of what he does and I do a little bit of what I do. And then, so I'll start it out and then I do kind of his process, and then I do other stuff, and I do a lot more with my hand paddle rather than doing it on the table, so I kind of converted it up so it's in front of me.
You found what works for you.
Exactly. So, yeah, it was cool. So I learned a couple things like that, learned from Revere, and then the traveling. And so I'm trying to think if I took any more real classes, like, that was an actual, because I've sat, like, people have been like, I didn't pay for a class, but there've been times where somebody was like, yo, watch this. And I stood there and just watched them, for like an hour. And that was a lesson, and it's like, I've done that with Mike Shelbo, just like watching Mike at MGP. Once I got to see Salt repair his own piece. So Salt broke a piece and I got to watch him repair it. And he taught me, if you can't see something on one side of a piece, you can heat up the other side of the piece, and the light from the other side of the piece being heated up orange will let you see through the other side of the piece. And he's showing me all this shit, like through teeth and stuff. Like, he's like, wow, I can't see this crack in the teeth, but I got to know if it's there. So
he heats the teeth up and then looks through the front. Or
he the opposite. So he'd heat up like the back of the neck and then the teeth glue.
Oh man.
So he could, so he could see. And it was like, it's just like shit like that. I'm just like watching Salt work and seeing how he does stuff. And I was just a really lucky thing. And, in MGP, I've done that for 4 years. Those guys, it's all for charity. And they just go out there and they go nonstop till they're not allowed, until they run out of oxygen. So sometimes at the last night, you see like, Krunkelstein, Salt, Banjo, fucking all these guys going from, 10 a.m. to 10 a.m. the next day,
right.
Non-stop. I always clock out at like 4 a.m. and I'm like, dude, I'm going back to the hotel. Like, I don't know when these guys are going to end. I'm always like a 3 a.m., 4 a.m. guy. I'm like, sun's about to come up. I don't know. I got places to be. And also I don't really have places to be, but sometimes I'm also trying to drive home. I live really far, so I actually drive the whole thing myself. So sometimes I actually start the drive that night, so I don't have to get another hotel room.
Right.
So that's normally what it is that I'll start my drive at like 3 a.m., get as far as I can, and sleep on the road. But yeah, so stuff like that, I tons of times, that
getting out there in the community is gonna get you skill sets, but you got to get some skill sets in your tool belt to go hang out with somebody and say, hey, let's hang out. Because if you got nothing, like you can't really come and hang out with anybody. So
totally.
What are your favorite items to blow? Pipes, rigs, pendants? I know you, I will say, I think you created and invented the little terp spinner screws.
Yeah, I always use the term invented very loosely. But Yeah, the Terp screw project is my new project. It's those little mini screws. So I've always loved sculpting. I've never really, I haven't spent as much time on it as I'd like to. But if you scroll through my page, occasionally you'll see sculpting projects, and that some of them are my favorite things to do. Um, I So the screws have been really fun. That was something, it kind of was inspired by like Sherb, a few years ago. I wanted to come up with a kind of a dabber that was fun. And I came up with a screw, and I was still actually working for the company that I was working for. So I didn't spend any time on it, and just kind of let it go for a few years. And then I kind of brought it back last year, and they took off instantly. Like I just made a couple dabbers and people were scooping them up like that. And I was just doing them as like drops, like call dibs below, on Instagram. People just calling dibs, and they were getting scooped up like 60 a piece, 80 a piece. It was pretty crazy. And but I was very proud of them. They were pretty cool. It actually looked pretty cool.
Sure.
They looked right, and they were better than even the ones I was making years prior. And they were getting better. So then all of a sudden, like slurpers were always kind of a thing, but slurpers were getting more and more popular. And bada bing, bada boom, I shrunk them down, and they spun around in the slurper. So
It just worked.
it was boom, it just all came together. And so that, and basically for the past 8 months or so since I launched them, I've been nonstop filling orders for them, custom orders, just and it's been awesome. And I've
And
had
you
a lot
enjoy
of,
them, so that's awesome, man.
yeah, they're cool. It's been a lot of figuring out the different sizes, because even though they're called mini XL and full size, they're all different, and they're like 20 different sizes, and they all are different by like a millimeter.
Right.
Whether it be width or length, they're all different by like a millimeter, and there's 20 different sizes. So I've been spending a lot of time on figuring all of that out, and how each size functions the best in each one, and trying to get them all to work for the nicer quality ones, and then even the knockoffs, just trying to that some of them are very odd. It's very difficult to actually get the screw to spin.
Wow.
But I've been figuring it out. So but things are kind of leveling off, and everything's kind of just becoming a bit pretty basic mini XL. And most people are just kind of landing on the mini XL, but there's still quite a bit of variation, and I've been working on satisfying each customer as best as I possibly can.
Yeah, that's a fun process, right?
Yeah.
What's your favorite color to work with?
It's always a hard question for me, because it's kind of like, what am I making? Because I would say a totally different thing if you were to ask me to make a filicello. So all of my line work that I do is all kind of opaque cadmium colors. So, and I wouldn't like really using transparent colors to do a lot of that stuff. It all just kind of bleeds out, fades, can't really see most of it unless you like back it. But even then it's kind of like odd, and there's depth to it. And so when I'm doing a lot of my line work, it's all like cadmium colors. And if you were to ask me that, I would just say anything but the neocads, because they just have too much clear in them. So
isn't it crazy how they had the CADs before, and everybody's like, oh, the new neocads work so great.
Yeah.
But it's like, where's my richness of color?
Stuff. Yeah, exactly. It just doesn't work for really specific stuff, kind of like millies and like line work and stuff, because it goes too transparent. But when it comes to like when it comes to like sculpting and screws and like stuff like that, when it comes to the screws, or really like just generally the colors, I use a lot of blue stardust.
I love
think
that stuff.
It works really well. I love the like sparkliness to it, and it's a nice blue, and it also comes in different variations. So you get like heavier blue stardust, and light blue stardust. So you actually get the option, and then it's really easy to layer it on clear and make your own and like do whatever you want. It's a really nice color, never burns out on me, never does some weird stuff on me. and it's got that sparkle, which is nice. And
Mhm.
so I really like Blue Stardust, and I use a lot of it. But trying to think of other colors that are just like, I mean, I love a color that's just easier to work and doesn't burn out. So it's easier to tell you like colors I don't like as opposed to colors I do like. Like,
Well,
you
which
know,
color would you say, man, just get rid of it, y'all. Don't even throw it at me.
well, there's eggplant, which is useless. Nobody can use it. It's a Boro bar.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah, it's absolutely useless. So you can chuck that. I don't know why it exists. Maybe I think it's a soft glass color because it might as well be because I can't use it and nobody else can. So you can chuck that. There's
I
a lot
hear
of
those
colors like
Boro
that.
bars are all going
But
away.
I mean, I love Boro bar. The Caribbean blue,
Oh, beautiful.
that would be my favorite blue. Right
Mhm.
now, everybody talks about Siberia. That's like Paramours, I think.
Mhm.
But that's pretty much the same thing. So Siberia and Caribbean blue is kind of like, that's what I've been using for a long time when it comes to blue. Love Caribbean blue Boro bar. Um, and I do use a couple of Boro bars for like purples and stuff like that because there's not that much of an array of solid cadmiums. A lot of the purples that you get from other companies are striking colors, so
Mhm.
it's kind of hard to get some of those like maroons and eggplant colors. Although eggplant is useless, but there's yeah, there's yeah, Borobar is pretty cool when it comes to those colors, but there are a couple useless ones. I wouldn't chuck them, but I just feel like just a lot of the warmer transparent colors are really difficult to use because the surface burns out. They just constantly, the surface is these tiny little white bubbles, and it's like, okay, I'll be slower, but again, I'm impatient. Like,
That's why I put clear over everything because you can
yeah,
rage it
yeah.
and
Yeah. So that includes like terps, pineapple, like even like Illuminati and stuff like that can do
Mhm.
that, all those. But I love them. They're very pretty, really nice to use. Yeah, I would just and I would say Star White. I think that's really fun to sculpt with. Um it's basic, so plain for me to say Star White, but as far as like a color I really like working with, I think Star White is really fun.
yeah,
As
I
far
think
as
when
like
it gets
moving, how it moves, and
yeah.
how it's odd and weird, and like I like how it looks in the end. I did like a statue of David once, and it was like, that's so perfect and nice, and it was just like I liked how it worked and functioned. Pink Cadillac, when it's not like second quality or something and has a bunch of bubbles in it, and it's just like a nice pink Cadillac pole, such a good color, like such a nice color to use. um it's how I learned what the term buttery meant. It's
Right
like I
on.
didn't really understand what the term buttery really meant as a color till I really like worked pink Cadillac in large form.
Right.
um and it's really pretty, and I've only really used it in small scale, but I've seen it in giant scale. Saw somebody make a giant chicken. I was like this big, and it was just so cool.
All out of pink Cadillac.
Yeah, full pink Cadillac, super gnarly. um yeah, I mean that those are a couple colors, Blue Stardust, Star White, pink Cadillac, and there's so many. I mean, I like Disco Sparkle over Steel Wool, and
Oh
I like
wow.
using Disco Sparkle.
Man, I
um
never would have expected to hear someone say that. The first sparkly color. And you gotta work
but
that disco sparkle kind of weird.
yeah, I mean, but maybe it depends on what I'm doing, though. Again, I mean,
Right.
it depends on, I mean, if you're looking for a
Application.
really specific look, like they are slightly different from each other. So, but it's like I've grown to use more Disco Sparkle than Steel Wool, and I do like using Disco Sparkle. And oh, Galaxy is an awesome
I
black
love
color.
that
When you
black.
don't want just a plain black, but you want black, Galaxy's tight. And I've been putting crushed opal on top of Galaxy, which looks tight. So
Oh God, sparkle over sparkle.
Yeah, it's been nice.
Hell yeah. Um, what's the most difficult piece you've ever attempted?
I mean, it might be that elephant piece that I made in competition. That was like that should have been made on a lathe for sure.
No doubt.
It was just section after section, like stacked on top of each other, and just it's big tubes, and had like figuring out the volumetrics of the piece in order to make sure that it would pull the water up, the weight of it would spin around, and then the weight of and also the chamber in the top is also designed with an extra section I call an Oreo drain, as opposed to using a Klein drain where you use like the Klein seal. I made an Oreo drain, and that actually allowed for a marble to sit in the top of the bong and spin around in the cyclone. So I gave you guys it was like around, but I never really like, I didn't do it for the competition because I was just like, in the moment, I was like, I don't want to drop this marble in there and something bad happen, like it gets stuck or something while the judges are coming up, but that's not going to happen. Like, I know it's not going to happen, but it's just like, I don't know. I had a lot of things going through my head. So I just said, fuck it. That's just the novelty piece of it. Let's just present the piece as is. And you know, the funny thing is, I may have gotten a couple extra points,
Right.
but it's like, fuck it, who cares? So anyway, to get it to cyclone in the top, drain, have it go through the elephant successfully, because like that was a whole thing. I did try a couple times and it wasn't functioning quite right. And then get it to drain and then still like function as a bong. And so it was very complex in the volumetrics. It was very complex in how many sections it was. And it was difficult as in such as complex and how big it was, and trying to actually navigate physically doing that when I'm actually quite small as a person.
And the sculpting work on there was quite phenomenal too. I mean, the elephant was beautifully done.
Thank you. Thank you.
Like
So
all around.
my some of that sculpting, some of my style of sculpting is on the cartoony side, almost like Finding Nemo. You know what I'm saying? Like it's not in it's not doesn't look like National Geographic type sculpting, but it's I was very proud of how that came out. Like it was a full elephant sculpture all stuck inside of a bong as it was pretty cool.
Yeah, it was cool.
Yeah.
What do you consider the most challenging style or piece that you blow?
Well, all the filicello work, the line work, I would say that that's probably the most challenging, and that's why I've always done it. Is why I was attracted to the filicello work, is that it wasn't. It was probably the thing that took the longest to come out with something that I was kind of happy with. Like it was more difficult to come out with something that was a success. I could make a pipe that I could smoke out of, and like I could make, it was like, but to come out with like the line work and stuff. And but at the same time, a lot of things were like that. I think that there was definitely other things that attracted me to it, because like honeycomb work, I tried doing that too. And it was the same thing as like filicello work and stuff. And it just would have taken me time and learning and figuring out and getting it better and better and better. And but I didn't go in that direction. I kind of dropped that and I went with filicello work. So there was other things that dragged me to it, but definitely the challenge of that was a huge attraction. The challenge of line work and how you have to do it again and again, keep trying, build on it, get better.
One little wiggle,
one little wiggle fucks it all up. I mean, and also just the mathematics of it fucks it up. I do 32 line and 64 line filicellos, and I know that
64 is crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I've done upwards of like 124 line reticellos and stuff like that, where you're filling in line after line after line after line after line. But the filicellos, I do 64 lines that cross each other. So it's like it's 32 lines that crosses over 32 lines.
Right.
So and I have to know that and have to make sure that that's right and line them up and touch each connection to each connection, because if I don't do that on one of them, it dominoes through the whole thing and just destroys the pattern. And at the end, you end up like,
So you've done that before, I'm assuming.
Oh, a ton of times. It was like
I
towards the
don't mean to
beginning, it
laugh.
was like, no, totally. Towards the beginning, it was like every 4 out of 10, I would fuck up. Then it was like every 3 out of 10, I'd fuck up. Then it was every 2 out of 10. Now at this point, it's like 1 out of 40. I will fuck up a line and be like, what the fuck did I do? Like going around and trying to look like, where did I mess up? There's no way I did that, and and I'm still doing that, just looking at it and just making sure that I got it right. But so it's a challenge. That was a huge challenge. And then I think maybe with everybody, in some way, recyclers and
Yeah. I love your videos, by
the
the way.
multifunctional things, the multifunctional, the multi-vesseled pieces that take different arms and stuff like that. Like with the elephant piece, as I mentioned, it's a recycler as well, and has all these different arms, and then the Oreo drain. And so trying to figure all that out, you just have so many different parts. It's like a puzzle. So that's a big challenge, is figuring out the puzzle pieces, the puzzled type of construction that we do. So, and then, yeah, I don't, it's hard to pick just one. I would say probably just the Filicello work has been my greatest challenge over a long period of time. But my top 3 maybe would be like the Filicello, the puzzling of, putting pieces together, and then, the working with colors and sculpting, like trying to balance working with actual colors, their bubbling, how they change colors, and how they layer on top of each other and stuff like that, and successfully coming out with a sculpture that looks good.
Right.
Yeah. So, so the balance of the medium in general, just the challenge of the medium. But
Hell yeah. Do you collaborate often?
not super often. Occasionally, like, I mean, the past 8 months, I've been so busy, like just filling orders. Even prior to that, I'm always kind of just doing my own thing, and just always have like orders or doing this and this. But I do actually have a list of friends that like have sent me sections, or I'm supposed to send them sections. And I've been meaning to put this block of time in to do that. And like, you're actually at the top of the list. We're supposed to be working on a Silver Surfer. No, it should, maybe we'll cut that out, but we're supposed to be working on something together. And
It's hard, man, finding the time when you got the demand.
Exactly. It's just finding the time.
It's difficult. So
yeah, it's finding the time, and when it comes to collabs, it's like, so this is what I've come to it's like, when it comes to collabs, I mean, I really would love to work with people, but when it comes to that, it's all in person.
I agree.
So,
like
it's all in person.
Like how we're doing it.
It's all about working in person.
Yeah.
It's about that relationship. So if I'm not doing that, then it really is only publicity.
Absolutely. And I like how you said that.
And if it is publicity, I've really learned that, like, if like anybody could go, like you could glass blow for one day and then go work with Salt or Banjo, and people would see it, you'd get tagged, they'd go and look at your account, but you actually probably won't get that many followers, because what they're going to do is they're going to go look at your account, look at what you're offering, and see if they want more.
Right.
What you're getting is the attraction, but it's your job to reel in that fish. So if you're not actually offering something up front, and you don't have that thing yet that if you don't have something to offer, really, like, you're not going to get back what, you're trying to get out of it in the first place. So when it comes to that, that's where my own kind of like lack of ego or self-worth comes in. And I don't really feel like I really have something to offer to Banjo, Salt, BMFT, Krunkelstein, all these guys, like it's hard for me to imagine I really have something to offer quite yet. But I'm sure a lot of people listening are like, what the fuck are you talking about? You've got 40,000 followers and you know, compete and have to fill a cello work. And it's like, yo, man, like make fucking fill a cello work. And, you know, the funny thing is I actually did get the opportunity to work with, you know, one or two of the people that I just mentioned. And it's like, but I fucked up. My sections broke. Shit like that.
I'm not laughing at you because I've done that.
It's like you're laughing at yourself and life, and you know what I'm talking about. Like, and it's like I fucked up, you know, and so it's like I don't make this huge effort to go out there and message everybody and be like, hey man, I've been working really hard on this shit. I've got this to offer for you. Let's do a collab. You know, it's like I've never had a rig that I make all the time. I always just like throw this new rig, this new rig, this new rig. I'm never making this, you know, I don't have a production line of some fun thing like you know, I feel like every 3 months I come up with something and I make a handful of them, you know, and I don't.
You got ADD?
I guess, you know, and it's like, or at least my work does, you know, so it's like, and I made the pearl cyclers with the marble that spun around in them and shit like that. And like, you know, I did the hashtag pearl cycler and I made the pearl caps and like tried doing that, but it's like, I just didn't get hooked on it. The bug didn't bite me, if you will, you know, so I didn't get hooked on it and I just moved on to something else. And, but it's, so I don't have a thing, you know, like Earl Jr., for example, recently has been making his backflip rigs. And he's going around working with everybody, making different backflip rigs. And that's a common theme with a lot of people. They make something, proud of it, have something to offer. They work with people. I really haven't ever really had something that I felt like I had to offer other than my Filicello work. And most of these guys, I feel like, why would you work with me? Why wouldn't you work with Adam Reitz or, you know, WGC is not a Phila guy, but, you know, line work guy. So John W was what I was blanking on, but Adam Reitz, John W, those types of guys. Why wouldn't you go and do that? You know, and it's like, so that's where I've always landed on it. So I don't make this big effort to get out there and try to do these collabs. So mainly I just collab with friends. And unfortunately, as you know, life puts friends second sometimes. So
it does.
You know, so I've but I do have a list of people. I do one or two every here and there. You know, you'll see me. I actually just recently dropped a little collab with Sherb, and me and Sherb do, you know, drop a collab every 6 months or something. And, you know, so I'll do a couple collabs with friends here and then. Me and Strawberry just made some collabs. Those are super fun. Did a full Filicello Strawberry and did a Strawberry stuck with a bunch of screws in it. And so I'll do a collab here and there, but.
Right. Yeah. Oh yeah. Have you ever, competed in events? Obviously you have competed in events. Yep. And so forget that stuff. Do you consume yourself cannabis?
Yes, I do.
Do you prefer flower concentrates or do you just love the plant?
I prefer the flower as opposed to concentrates. Truth be told, I've never mentioned this on social media or anything, but concentrates just make me cough. And I just can't seem to get it right. Even if it's the tiniest dab and it's the perfect temperature, it still just makes me cough. But herb doesn't. And, you know, that's not the case with everybody. Somebody actually, I said that somebody was like, really? That's so interesting. Because a lot of people are kind of the opposite, you know? So it's odd that I'm experiencing that. I know it's kind of like, by definition, kind of strange or weird, you know, it's non-norm, but but that's just what I've experienced. So I definitely prefer herb as opposed to concentrate, but I do like a pen. So when I'm traveling, I can do concentrate in a pen, and I like that. So
yeah, nice and easy to hide and whatnot as well.
Yeah.
What hobbies do you have outside of glass?
I live in Vermont, so winter and summer are totally different. you know, as far as like what we can actually do. So wintertime would be more like snowboarding, summertime's more like skateboarding. So you got to like switch up what you're doing because just the weather and shit.
So
And
you're definitely a boarder though then.
Yeah, yeah. But the past couple of years, I kind of fucked up my knee, so I haven't really been doing it as much. But I'm feeling much better as far as like my knees go, so I'm probably going to be doing that a little bit more. But the past couple of years, I haven't gotten. I normally would get a season pass at a mountain and like go to the skate park more often, but I haven't been doing either of those things very much. But I really like kayaking. I love kayaking. We've got a river and the lake here, so I get out kayaking. Hiking is a big one. We've got tons of mountains around.
Yeah.
So even if you're not snowboarding or whatever, you've got the mountains for mountain biking and hiking. Um, I have a big garden, and I actually this year I just planted all new grass on my lawn,
Oh
which was
wow.
this giant project. I had to till the yard,
Hmm.
replaced a bunch of soil, new seed. I seeded it like 4 times every week for a couple weeks. It's awesome. Everything's looking amazing. I just installed a new white picket fence all the way around my garden. It's adorable and looks amazing. I put in a ton of work. Like I've been putting in hours in the sun every day as much as I can. So I've been doing a lot of yard work. I love getting outside, like that stuff. I play video games and stuff occasionally. I actually play video games with Strawberry Glass,
Okay.
Trevor. So we play Call of Duty and stuff sometimes. And I love movies. I've been a big TV guy my whole life, so I watch a lot of TV. Um, but I do, but you know, I feel guilty doing that. But a lot of the time, I watch TV and I'm basically just packing orders for people and answering emails, and like I just nonstop work on Glass and Instagram and stuff like that while I'm watching TV now. So I feel less guilty. But so yeah, so I'm so lots of outside stuff like that. And I bought a new moped. I had a moped for a few years. It broke down, so I just got a new moped. So that's like my thing to get outside and go ride around on the moped and go to and from work and stuff. And yeah, lots of stuff like that. You know.
Oh yeah. Um,
Oh, I do a
what?
lot of DIY too. So when I'm not glass blowing, like I do a lot of DIY projects. I just like sanded down and painted my car. So I learned how to paint automobiles,
Right.
which was just like a weird thing I learned on YouTube. I learned how to detail my car, like shampoo and all that shit. And I fixed my house. Right? So I go around and just fix shit around my house, and like I just repainted my whole house, like all the doorway, all the trimming, and so thought I mentioned that too. Sorry, but
Oh
I do
yeah.
tons of DIY stuff and just like fix shit up and have a lot of fun with that. I built a fence specifically designed for cats, so my cats have their own yard. And then my mom liked it so much, I built one for her too.
So they got their
So
own little yard in a
yeah,
yard.
they can hop out of the window. And they just go out of the window. They go outside in a small yard and then hop back in the window. It's pretty cool.
Fresh. Hell yeah. Um, what can we look forward to in the future from you?
It's hard to say. I can say that right now what I'm doing is I'm focusing with the pandemic. I basically just said, you know what? Uh, I used to travel a lot. So every year I'd have like 3 or 4 events that every year I was trying to get to. And it felt like after an event, I was just getting ready for the next event. You know, so it was just nonstop. And that was just how it was for like 4 years, 5 years. And then the pandemic struck. And then all of a sudden, I'm just like, oh, well, I guess I'm just a homebody and I'm just going to work. Like, and I have like nothing to do. Like, I'm just making money. But then, so what I'm doing now is I'm just focusing all my energy into saving up money to buy a new home where I can basically set up a brand new studio and have like an in-home studio. And right now I'm paying rent in a studio outside of
Mhm.
my home, and I love it. It's an awesome studio, but I would really love to have an in-home studio. And so I want to get a new home, maybe have a bigger garden, and basically just get that set up. And then from there, try to put myself back out there, get back into the shows, and try to compete again.
Hell yeah, man. Well, I look forward to seeing you out at the shows. I know watching you at Champs and any of the other times I got to meet you in person. It's always a great time. So,
No, it
uh,
was awesome. It was awesome to get to see you.
um, Do you have any, oh, this is a question. Do you have the same passion today as when you first started this stuff?
Definitely not, but it's not necessarily a horrible thing. It's bear in mind I was 16 years old when I started. I'm 28 now. It's been a pretty long time. It's been a long career,
Mm-hmm.
a long journey with lots of ups and downs, and I have a much different view on all of it than I did when I was a kid.
You go
I
in eyes wide shut at the beginning, like
Exactly. I mean, I had never seen Instagram, didn't know that it existed. I had never been to a trade show. I didn't know that there were famous glass blowers. I didn't know any of it. I
yeah,
just knew that people made pipes out of glass and that existed and that it was a really cool medium and I really wanted to do it. And like, so nowadays it's like I can't have that same view because I just, too many windows are open. I was just looking out one window and now I've got 360-degree view. So there's no way for me to still have the view as I did in the beginning. But I have a very, but that doesn't mean that the view that I have now is bad.
right,
Just
right. Just different.
just much different. And I've had ups and downs. Some people worse than others, but it's like I've definitely had ups and downs with my job and the industry and my career and everything. And
I think life does that a
but
lot. It's
yeah,
just a
exactly.
fucking tidal wave, man. And you
Exactly.
got to ride that shit. And,
But
you
but
know,
but yeah, but right now, things are good. They're steady, content, and actually things are better than they ever have been. I was always I was never the starving artist. I was lucky enough to, always kind of make ends meet. And I lived in my mom's house till I was like 21 and
me
just to
too.
save money, and
If,
stuff. I
if you
mean,
can do it, do it.
I lived on my own from 16 to 18. I was just totally alone from 16 to 18. But then I
That's
moved back in
crazy.
with my mom when she moved back to Vermont. So I actually moved back in from 18 to 21, save money, get ready, get myself to a point where I could feel like I could just be on my own and start doing that. And feel comfortable doing that as a glass blower. You're not like just making ends meet doing something that I didn't care about. My parents, again, were always like, find the thing that makes you happy. And, I just lucked out with glass blowing being fiscally lucrative, and so, but I made my ends meet, but it was never really like, I was never saving money. I was never, I was just making things work.
Mm-hmm.
But at this point, I've been doing this for a really long time. Maybe I'm not, the greatest glass blower in the world and anything. I didn't become Buck, but
But he's been doing
I've
this
been
for,
doing it,
you can't compare yourself to Buck, right? Like
Yeah, I
nobody
mean,
can. There's just
yeah.
20 years ahead of you almost.
Yeah,
Like,
I mean, well, I mean, he's actually not that much older than me, but he does have a couple more years on me
right.
in this. But it's uh, the truth be told, my old bosses used to say some shit like, we want you to be the next Buck. Like, we thought you'd be the next Buck.
More
Like, shit, like,
pressure.
like just pressure, man. Like, so it's like I always say, and but anyway, I may not have become one of the elites, as you will.
I disagree. You're working on it.
But I have been doing it, and I've worked really hard. And at this point, I've come up with a couple products and a sustainable or a following and sustainable products that have allowed me to at least start putting a little bit of money into the savings account, start feeling like I have, a job I can do and go to work every day and have something to make. Because it's like, a lot of days it'd be like, all right, what am I going to make? Because I could like go and just make some, weird shit, but it's like, I don't know if that's going to sell, and I don't know how much. And I really like some sustainability for this rent, for this month's rent, So it's
Absolutely.
like, but at this point, I feel like I have some sustainability. I feel like I have a little bit of money going into the savings account, and things are pretty good. And, as far as the career and, as far as career goes, I'm feeling neutral and content, feeling good. And so, yeah.
Oh yeah.
So things are in a good place. But yeah, obviously my view has changed on all of it, and it's become a career.
Oh yeah. That's kind of like what happens in life. Life happens, and it just
Exactly.
keeps going. Do you have any shout outs you want to throw out, or any last words?
Um, I've shouted out a couple people all along
Mm-hmm.
through here. So shout out to all those guys. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I didn't mention her, but I'll just say Allison from MGP. She runs MGP, and MGP really has been a very big part of my life for a big portion of my career. I mean, my
You've mentioned
career
it a
has
lot.
been pretty much my whole life, and MGP has been a very big part of that. So it's like, big thank you to her. And because she's also been extra sweet to me over the years, and which was a huge, nice thing to have. And so shout out to Allison, because I didn't mention her by name, but at MGP. And I mentioned Matty White, but he always was really nice to me and got me into Champs. And again, Champs has always been a big part of my, career and life. And not always, but it has been since I started going a few years ago. And it's been a few years now. It's been 4 or 5 years that it's been a part of my life. Just shout out to everyone, all of my buddies out there, that who you are. Like, there's a lot of people out there that have, really stuck with me through the ups and downs that we've mentioned. And I wouldn't have what I have without all of the support from all the people that are online and in person. Yeah.
Well,
So
hell yeah, Takoda. It was a freaking honor to sit here and spend some time with you, and get to know you a little bit more. I really want to say thanks a lot, man, for doing this.
no, thank you. I this was one of the best interviews I've ever done. This was really fun.
And where's the best place where people can go ahead and find your stuff? Is it Instagram, Facebook? Do you have a website?
Yeah, Instagram is where I'm the most active, and it's easiest to see my work and contact me. So just be Instagram, and my personal Instagram, my main account, is Takoda.Madrona. So it's a TAKODA .MADRONA. And so Takoda Madrona. And that's my main Instagram, where I'll have updates on all my glass. And I also have my new account for my new product, Terp Screw. And it is just Terp Screw, TERPSCREW. So Terp Screw. And you can go there too for some updates on Terp Screws. And you can inquire about orders on both. It's fine. You can DM either. But I do prefer you to only email one. Most people do email both simultaneously, and that's fine too. But it is faster.
Both are
And it is
going to
more
you.
convenient. Exactly. Both are coming straight to me. I run all of my accounts. I do everything myself. I don't hire anybody to make my products.
The
It's
joy of
all
being an
me.
entrepreneur.
Yeah. So yeah, you can contact me there and see my work there. I used to have a website, but right now I'm really just filling custom orders. So until that changes, I'm just going to stick to Instagram and personal DMs.
All right. Well, Fresh Takoda, thanks a lot, and you have a great day.
Yeah, thank you, man. Have a good
All right.
one.
Bye. Well, all right. Another great interview. Like, this was super cool. Just felt like I was hanging out with a friend there. Man, it was a blast. Make sure you go check him out, support him, get some of his screws. Get Screwed by Takoda. Anyways, that was a lot of fun. And remember, we have Elev8 Dolls, Elev8 Dudes Brand Ambassadors Program. Check it out. As well as we have Elev8 Veterans. Go out there, support us, Help us build Elevate. It's a way of life and elevate mind, body, spirit.